The flea market in Marigold Ridge was alive that Saturday morning, buzzing with voices, scents, and colors. But among all the laughter, the bartering, and the music drifting through the air, one moment stood out, a moment that would change a life forever. It began with a young woman walking through the market, her steps quick, her eyes curious. She wasn't the kind to simply wander without purpose, yet here she was, weaving between stalls piled high with old records, jars of jam, faded quilts, and hand-carved toys. A fiddler played near the fountain, bowstring frayed but still carrying a lively tune. The smell of roasted peanuts mingled with fresh peaches, and children darted through the square in bursts of laughter. Her name was Rowan Pike. At just 22, Rowan carried the air of someone who craved movement, adventure, and challenge. Her lean figure spoke of cliff climbs and long hikes. Her denim jacket and scuffed boots looked like they had been tested on trails and rocks far from town. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose knot, strands escaping whenever the wind teased, and her gray eyes scanned everything with a restless sharpness, as if she was always searching for something she couldn't name. She told herself she came to the market for peaches and maybe a tool or two. But Rowan knew herself better. Trouble, or something close to it, always seemed to notice her before she noticed it, and that was when she saw it. At the far edge of Cedar Square, near a cracked bird bath lined with moss, a crooked piece of cardboard leaned against an old wooden crate. The words, written in black marker, were blunt and strange. $9 for this dog. Behind the sign lay a German shepherd. Age clung to him like a shadow, his fur thinned and dulled, ribs jutting where strength had once been, and one ear bent forward in a permanent tilt. A pale scar circled his neck like a cruel memory of rope pulled too tight. Yet when Rowan's gaze locked with his, she didn't see weakness. She saw eyes, dark, steady, unbroken, the kind of eyes that held history, patience, and a quiet strength. Rowan crouched without thinking. Dust rose from the ground as the shepherd's chest lifted with a shallow breath, and still his eyes stayed on hers. She felt something shift inside, a tug, like recognizing a face you thought you had forgotten long ago. She stretched her hand slowly, letting him sniff. He didn't flinch. He didn't wag. He simply looked at her, calm and unafraid, as though he'd been waiting for this exact moment. The man standing nearby shifted impatiently. He looked worn down, mid-40s maybe, wiry frame wrapped in a jacket that had once been camouflage, but was now more patch than fabric. His face was rough with stubble, his cap pulled low, and his eyes carried no light, no hope, just the flatness of someone who had stopped investing in tomorrow. "Name's Harlan Voss," he muttered, his voice gravelly, whether from cigarettes or regret. "Dog's old, 7, maybe 8. Sleeps more than he stands. $9 and he's yours. Rope comes with." Rowan glanced at the rope digging into the shepherd's scarred neck, then back at the man. "What's his name?" she asked softly. "Harlan." Shrugged, scratching his jaw. "Dog." Rowan gave a small, disbelieving snort. "That won't do." She studied the shepherd again. His posture, even in exhaustion, carried dignity, as if he still guarded something invisible. "Rook," she said finally, "you look like someone who stands watch." The shepherd's bent ear twitched, but he gave nothing away. If he approved or disapproved, he kept his secret. Rowan's mind ran through the practical objections. Rent, due, groceries waiting, vet bills she couldn't afford. But another voice, smaller and stronger, spoke clearly. "This isn't about money or logic or timing. This is about not walking away." Her hand slipped into her pocket and came back with 9 worn singles, the scattered remains of long cafe shifts and odd climbing gigs. She held them out. "I'm buying." Harlan snatched the bills like they might vanish. Without another word, he began folding up his table, eager to melt into the crowd. Rowan crouched and carefully untied the rope, her fingers brushing the scar at Rook's neck. The shepherd rose slowly, joints stiff but steady, then shook himself once. For a heartbeat, his size surprised her. Taller and broader than he'd seemed lying down, a shadow of strength still echoing in his frame. From the next stall, a woman leaned out. Her floral apron was dusted with flour and freckles danced across her cheeks. The tag on her chest read Doi Shu, Market Coordinator. Known for kindness that never seemed to run out, Doi had laugh lines etched as deeply as riverbeds. "Bless you, dear," she said, her voice warm as she watched Rowan with the shepherd. "Rescues always know when they're rescued. Here, take this." She pressed a card into Rowan's hand. "Local vets give discounts, and I stitch dog beds from quilts. They're loud as circus tents, but soft." Rowan smiled, tucking the card into her jacket. "Thank you." Doi bent toward Rook, murmuring something gentle. He didn't wag, but he blinked slowly, a truce of sorts. By the time Rowan turned, Harlan Voss was gone, swallowed by the crowd like smoke in the wind. Rowan walked on with Rook at her side. The crowd shifted easily to make room, whispers following them, children staring wide-eyed, couples leaning close to murmur. An older man even tipped his hat as they passed. Rook ignored it all, keeping pace with a quiet steadiness. They reached the bulletin board near the post office, papers fluttering under rusted tacks. Rowan's eye caught one. "Missing pets, please help. 3 grainy photos. A terrier, a striped cat, a shepherd mix. Below the sheriff's number." Rowan's chest tightened, but she shook it off. "Not our fight today," she whispered. Rook sniffed. The board once before moving on, but unease crept back when Rowan noticed a pickup at the corner. Olive drab paint, worn and dull, the kind of truck that still carried menace even in its age. Behind the wheel sat a broad-shouldered man with clipped hair streaked with gray, pale eyes sharp as ice, his gaze fixed not on Rowan, but on Rook. Not curiosity, calculation. For a moment too long, his jaw worked as if chewing unspoken words. Then he started the engine. The truck coughed smoke and rolled away, vanishing into the pines. Rowan frowned, her skin prickling. She told herself it was nothing, just a stranger annoyed at market traffic. Still, her mind filed it away like a burr stuck deep. Olive paint, dented fender, cold eyes. She tightened her grip on the leash. "Come on, Rook," she murmured. The shepherd's bent ear flicked at a crow's cry overhead, but he stayed at her side as they climbed the porch steps to her attic. Apartment. A timber hideaway above an old clapboard house. The key turned in the lock with a soft click, the sound of something beginning. Behind them, Maple Street stretched quiet, cedar-scented breeze slipping through the air. Rowan didn't notice the olive truck pause again at the far intersection before disappearing for good. That first night wasn't what Rowan expected. She imagined Rook curling up on the quilt she'd spread near her bed. Instead, he settled by the front door, stretched long across the rug like a sentinel. His chin rested on his paws, but his eyes never fully closed. When the apartment creaked, wood beams shifting, pine branches brushing the roof, Rook's head lifted each time. Just past midnight, Rowan woke to claws tapping the floorboards. Rook stood stiff at the window, gaze pinned to the alley below where shadows shifted. He didn't growl, but his whole body was a blade of vigilance. "Easy," Rowan whispered, crouching beside him. Her hand pressed his shoulder, feeling the tension wound tight. His ear twitched at her touch, but his eyes stayed locked on the dark outside. Slowly, he eased down again, though he never slept deeply. Rowan lay back in bed, her chest rising with the steady realization she hadn't just brought home a dog. She had brought home a guardian. Morning came pale and cool. Mist clung to the gutters, the mountains draped in a sheet of white sky. Rowan poured herself coffee, steam curling upward. That was when Rook stirred suddenly, trotting to the door with a sharp, low whine. He scratched once, urgent, then turned back toward her, his eyes commanding. "What is it?" Rowan muttered, setting down the mug. When she opened the door, Rook moved immediately across the street. His gait was stiff from age, but each step carried certainty. Rowan followed, heart picking up until they stopped before the modest bungalow, belonging to Mabel Wickham. Mabel was 78, a widow whose late husband had once run the sawmill. The house reflected her, tidy but worn, shutters painted lilac through the paint peeled in places, a small garden leaning against the fence where roses tangled with stubborn weeds. Mabel herself was known in town for her feathered hats and her stubborn kindness. She still baked pies for the church despite her joints and volunteered at the library on Thursdays. This morning, however, her house was silent. The door stood ajar, a draft carrying the faint smell of gas and something sour, like spilled juice left too long. Rowan's stomach tightened. She glanced at Rook, who stood braced at the threshold, hackles slightly raised. "Mabel," Rowan called softly, pushing the door wider. No answer. Inside, the living room was dim. Curtains half drawn let in only slivers of light. On the floor near the armchair, Mabel lay crumpled. Her skin glistened with sweat, lips pale, hands trembling against the carpet. Her eyes fluttered as though she were caught between waking and unconsciousness. Rowan dropped to her knees, panic sparking through her chest. "Oh no!" She remembered fragments from a first aid course at the climbing gym. Airway, breathing, circulation. She checked. Mabel was breathing, but shallow, irregular. "Mabel, can you hear me?" The old woman's eyes rolled weakly. Her voice came out a whisper. "Sugar." Rowan's hands shook as she fumbled for her phone. She dialed emergency services, voice firm despite the thudding of her heart. Elderly woman collapsed. Possible hypoglycemia. She's clammy, confused. Yes, breathing. Yes, conscious, but fading. The dispatcher guided her quickly. Check if the woman could swallow. Give fast sugar if available. Rowan spotted a tin on the side table labeled in neat handwriting. Glucose tablets. She pulled one free, eased it carefully into Mabel's mouth, coaxed her to suck. Rook hovered close, his nose brushing Mabel's sleeve as though urging her to stay. Minutes stretched into years. Rowan kept talking, soft encouragements, promises that help was coming. She remembered her own grandmother's hands in the garden, dirt under the nails, and willed Mabelto hold on the way her grandmother once had through storms. At last, the rising wail of sirens pierced the quiet street. Relief almost buckled Rowan's knees. The ambulance pulled up, red lights washing the lilac shutters and pulses. 2 paramedics hurried in, one tall and sandy-haired, the other compact, with a neat braid tucked under her cap. They moved with brisk precision, checking vitals, sliding oxygen gently into place. Rowan stepped back, trembling now that action had replaced panic. Rook remained close until one paramedic gave him a cautious smile. "He can't ride guard outside," she said kindly, and Rowan led him to the porch. As the stretcher rolled out, Mabel's eyes opened fully for a moment. Her voice was weak but certain. "That dog has saved me." Tears streaked her temples. "My guardian, my old knight." Rowan swallowed hard, stroking Rook's fur. "He's your VC, Mabel." The paramedics lifted her into the ambulance, doors shutting with a final clang. That was when Deputy Cole Merritt arrived. Patrol car crunching gravel at the curb. Cole was 34, taloned solid, with shoulders that seemed built to carry more than their share. His dark hair, cropped close, was already flecked with early gray. He wore the tan uniform of the county sheriff's office, the badge gleaming on his chest, and his expression held both caution and a steadiness Rowan had always respected. They knew each other casually. Rowan had once joined a volunteer search and rescue exercise he supervised. Cher remembered his calm instructions, his dry humor, and how he listened more than he spoke. Cole approached, eyes taking in the scene. The ambulance, Rowan pale with adrenaline, the German shepherd standing like a statue at her side. "What happened?" he asked, voice low but steady. Rowan explained quickly. Rook's insistence, the open door. Mabel collapsed. Cole's gaze lingered on the dog. "So he led you straight here?" "Yes," Rowan said. He wouldn't let me ignore it. Cole crouched, studying the shepherd. "Old boy, huh? 7, 8, maybe? You did good." His voice softened on those last words, and Rook blinked, accepting the acknowledgement without pretense. The deputy stood, folding his arms. "You know, this isn't the first time he's helped already. There's been a string of missing pets the last 2 months. Cats, small dogs, some vanish from yards in broad daylight. Folks are scared. We don't have evidence yet, but I'd wager he knows more about the streets than most." Rowan felt her breath catch. The memory of the olive green pickup truck at the flea market flashed in her mind. The driver's pale eyes measuring Rook like merchandise. A chill slid down her back. "Yesterday," she said slowly, "I saw a man in a truck watching him. Green paint-dented fender. He didn't look innocent." Cole's jaw tightened, but he nodded once as if the detail matched suspicions he already carried. "Keep that in mind," he said. "If you see it again, call me. Day or night?" He handed her a card, edges worn from frequent use, his name printed beneath the county emblem, his handwriting, firm and square, added a direct number. Rowan tucked it into her jacket, fingers brushing the crumpled vet discount. Card from Doy, the market coordinator. 2 cards, 2 doors opening, both tied to the shepherd, standing calmly by her leg. The ambulance pulled away, siren wailing toward the county hospital. Rowan watched until it vanished around They Bend, then looked down at Rook, his tail tapped once against the porch. "You really are a knight," she whispered. And for the first time, she believed that buying him had not been chance. But the first move in a story neither of them yet understood. Evening settled over Marigold Ridge like a heavy blanket, pulling shadows across the rooftops and painting the edges of the pine woods in smoky violet. The air carried the smell of sawdust and sap, remnants of the old lumber trade that had built the town. For Rowan Pike, the quiet hours were rarely restful. They tugged at her curiosity, whispering that the day wasn't finished. She clipped a leash to Rook's collar and whistled. The German shepherd rose from his post near the door, stretching stiff limbs, but moving with surprising purpose. His bent ear twitched as though already tuned to sounds Rowan couldn't hear. She locked her door and followed him into the cool dusk. Their path wound toward the abandoned lumber yard, a sprawl of weathered sheds and stacked timbers where teenagers gathered. At night, toss smoke or carve initials into old beams. Rowan had spent childhood afternoons climbing those piles of planks, pretending they were mountains. Now in adulthood, the yard had a different Torah, one of secrecy. The further they walked, the more Rook changed. His pace slowed, nose testing the air. His tail stiffened, body angling toward the chain-link fence that enclosed the yard. Rowan felt her stomach clench. She trusted that tension. "Easy, boy," she whispered, ducking into the shadow of a leaning pine. From inside the yard came a faint sound, thin, muffled, and heart-snagging. It was the cry of a puppy, weak and rhythmic, as if begging the world not to forget it. Rook responded instantly, a low whine pushing from his chest. His ears strained forward. Rowan's breath hitched. She crouched low and guided Rook along the fence line until they reached a gap where the metal sagged. She slipped through, landing on damp earth. The yard was hushed except for the occasional clatter of loose tin. Then headlights split the dark. A pickup truck, paint the color of worn military olive, rolled into the yard. Its engine coughed once, then settled into a growl. Rowan's pulse spiked. The truck was unmistakable. The same vehicle she had seen at the flea market. The one whose driver's eyes had calculated Rook with an unsettling weight. She tugged Rook behind a stack of boards, heart hammering against her ribs. From her vantage point, she watched as the truck stopped beside warehouse number 7, a squat building with a rusted sliding door. The driver climbed out. He was in his 50s, thick-set with a neck like an anvil, shoulders stretching his flannel shirt to its seams. His face was a slab of stone, jaw square, lips pressed into a permanent sneer. Under the dim yard lamp, Rowan saw the deep lines etched around his mouth. Lines of command, not of laughter. His hair was clipped close, gray threaded through black. Rowan guessed this must be the man Cole suspected. The one people whispered about. He moved with the certainty of someone who believed he owned the ground under his boots. From the truck bed he lifted a wooden crate. The sound inside twisted Rowan's stomach. More whimpers, frantic claws scrabbling against slats. The man grunted, carried the crate to House 7, and shoved the door open. A dim light flickered inside just long enough for Rowan to glimpse other shapes stacked along the wall. Shapes too much like more crates. Rook's muscles tense beneath her hand. She pressed his collar gently, willing him to stay silent. Rowan pulled a pen from her jacket pocket and scribbled the truck's license plate onto her palm in the glow of her phone. The numbers blurred with sweat, but she repeated them under her breath until they imprinted like a scar. Her chest thudded with the knowledge of what she was seeing, the missing pets Cole had spoken of. Maybe worse. This was Thiemann behind it. The driver lingered only long enough to shove the crate inside, then wiped his hands on his jeans and slammed the warehouse door shut. He returned to the truck, climbed in, and reversed with the ease of routine. Within moments, the olive green beast had rumbled out of the yard and down the dirt road, its tail light swallowed by night. Only when silence returned did Rowan exhale. She crouched beside Rook, pressing her forehead lightly to his. "We saw enough," she whispered. "Now we tell Cole." Rook's breath huffed against her cheek, steady as if confirming her resolve. The walk back home felt longer than the approach. Every snap of twig made Rowan's head swivel. She replayed the driver's face in her mind, the way he had lifted that crate without a flicker of conscience. She thought of the flyer on the post office board, the missing cats and dogs. This wasn't coincidence, it was machinery. Back at their apartment, Rowan pulled out her phone and dialed Cole's number. He answered on the second ring, voice calm, but edged. "Merritt, it's me, Rowan," she said quickly. "I saw it." The truck, olive green. He took a crate into warehouse number 7 at the old lumberyard. I wrote down the plate. She rattled off the numbers. There was a pause on the other end. The sound of papers being shuffled. "Say it again," Cole said. She did slower this time. Cole exhaled low and deliberate. "Gray Donovan." The name hit the line like a stone dropped in water. "Who is he?" Rowan asked. Cole's voice grew darker. "Gay Donovan's been on our radar for years, used to run dogs without permits, bred them in basement, sold them across county lines, cruel setups, cages, novice care. He slipped charges twice because we couldn't pin the evidence to him. Always one step ahead. If that plate matches, you just handed me the first nail in his coffin." Rowan leaned against the wall, knees weak with the weight of what she'd stumbled into. So it's real. All the missing pets could trace back to him. Cole. Finished. But we move careful. He's smart, ruthless, and if he saw you, he let the warning hang. Rowan looked at Rook, Theskar on his neck catching the lamplight. "He didn't see us," she said. But Rook knew. "He heard the puppies before I did." Cole's tone softened. "That dog may be the best partner you've got. Keep him close. I'll start paperwork. See if we can get surveillance on the yard. But for now, Rowan, promise me you won't go back there alone." "I promise," she said, though part of her new curiosity might argue otherwise. When she hung up, Rowan sat on the edge of her bed. Rook climbed heavily onto the rug beside her, settling with a groan. She stroked his fur, whispering, $9 doesn't buy coincidence, does it? You were meant to find me." Outside, the night pressed against the windows, and somewhere in the distance, an engine growled down the highway. Low, steady, like a predator not yet finished. Rain came down in silver needles that evening, flattening the sky into a curtain of gray. The mountain ridge that usually stood proud over Marigold Ridge blurred into fog, and gutters overflowed along Maple Street. Rowan Pike tightened her jacket collar against the wet and glanced toward the Hart residence across the street. The Harts were a working-class family who lived in a narrow duplex, paint peeling from the siding, but their small garden was always dotted with marigolds and mismatched pots. Rowan often waved to Penny Hart, their 8-year-old daughter, a girl with chestnut braids and an ever-present notebook where she drew animals in bright colors. Penny's parents worked long shifts, her mother at the sawmill office, her father driving. Trucks for the quarry. Tonight, only the girl's aunt was supposed to greet her after school. But by dusk, lights were blazing in the Hart house and voices carried across the street in sharp, worried bursts. Rowan sensed something was wrong. She crossed just as Deputy Cole Merritt pulled up, headlights cutting through the rain. Cole stepped from his cruiser, water streaking the brim of his hat. His presence, tall and solid, steadied the frantic energy pouring out of the house. Inside, Rowan met Penny's mother, Martha Hart, who had rushed home early. Martha was in her early 30s, her auburn hair plastered to her cheeks, hands trembling as she clutched Penny's backpack. "She never came home," Martha said, voice breaking. "The school bus dropped her off at the corner. She should have walked straight here, but she's gone." The aunt, a tired woman with spectacles sliding down her nose, wrung her hands. "I looked everywhere. The yard, the neighbor's porch. Nothing." Cole's jaw tightened, though his tone remained calm. "We'll find her. Every minute matters." The storm complicated things. Darkness fell earlier, tracks washed out by the downpour. But Rowan stepped forward. "Take Rook," she urged, pointing to the shepherd waiting at the door, rain slicking his fur. "He can track her scent." Cole hesitated only a second. He had seen Rook's instincts before. "What do you need?" he asked. Martha clutched at her sleeve. From her pocket, she produced a blue handkerchief, edges frayed, embroidered with small daisies. Penny keeps it in her coat pocket. It still smells like her Rowan crouched, letting Rook sniff the cloth. The shepherd's bent ear twitched, nostrils flaring, body going taut with focus. Then he wheezed once, tugging at the leash, pulling toward the door. "Let's go," Cole ordered. The search party formed quickly. 2 deputies with flashlights, Rowan beside Rook and Cole coordinating. Rain plastered Rowan's hair to her forehead, but adrenaline burned away her discomfort. They followed Rook down Maple, across the soaked fields behind the houses, and toward the line of pines that bordered the old lumber yard. The shepherd's nose skimmed low, paws sure even in mud, held them along a stream swollen with rain. The water, rushing fast. Rowan's heart squeezed at the thought of Penny slipping near the bank, but Rook did not pause there. Instead, he veered toward the dark outline of warehouse number 7, the same place Rowan had seen crates carried only nights before. Her stomach dropped. Not here. Rook halted near the sidewall, nose pressed to the rotting wood. A faint sound reached Rowan's ears, a knock weak and frantic beneath the clatter of rain. "Did you hear that?" she shouted. Cole raised his fist to halt the team, then pressed his ear to the wall. Another sound came, muffled but distinct. A child's whimper. "She's inside," Cole confirmed, his voice sharpened. "Pry it open." The deputies swung crowbars against the warped door frame. Wood splintered, nails shrieked. They forced their way in, beams of flashlights sweeping across damp concrete. The warehouse smelled of rust and wet straw. Rook bolted forward, nose to the ground, leading them to the center where a section of flooring sagged. Rowan dropped to her knees, pressing her ear to the boards. "Penny, can you hear me?" A faint voice rose through the gaps. "Help!" Her throat clenched. "We're here! Hold on!" Cole barked orders. One deputy jammed the crowbar between the boards, prying hard until the planks groaned. Together, they levered up a section, revealing a hollow crawl space beneath. Flashlight beams pierced the dark, landing on the small, trembling figure of Penny Hart. She was curled tight, her raincoat smeared, with dirt, braids undone. Her eyes squinted at the light, wide with fear. I couldn't get out," she whispered. Rowan reached down, arms shaking with relief, and lifted the girl free. Penny clung to her neck, shivering. "You're safe now," Rowan murmured. "We've got you." Cole crouched beside them, his usually stern features softened. "Good job, kiddo. You're going home." But before relief could settle, the crunch of tires echoed from outside. Headlights flared through the rain-streaked window slats. A vehicle had pulled into the yard, the same olive-green truck. Cole's face hardened. "Stay here," he ordered. He motioned to one deputy to escort Penny and Rowan toward the rear exit while he and the other deputy drew their weapons and approached. The entrance. The warehouse door creaked open. A man stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket. He was wiry mid-30s with a scruffy beard and eyes that darted nervously. He carried himself like someone used to taking orders, not giving them. Cole leveled his voice. "Sheriff's office, hands where I can see them." The man froze, eyes wide. "Wait, I'm just the driver." His hands shot up, palms open. "Don't shoot. I'm only supposed to drop the crates, that's all." Cole cuffed him quickly, reading him his rights. Under questioning, the man babbled. "It's not me. It's Gray. Gray Donovan. He runs everything. I just move the animals. Tonight I was told to keep the kid here. Scare her mama into signing papers. She's got a litter of pups he wants. Said if she didn't give them up, the girl wouldn't come home." Rowan's stomach twisted. She hugged Penny closer, feeling the child's small body shudder. This wasn't only theft. It was extortion aimed at families already struggling. Cole's jaw was steel. "You'll tell us everything, every delivery, every contact. And Donovan, he's not slipping away this time." As the deputies hauled the driver out into the rain, Rowan stroked Penny's hair. The girl buried her face into Rowan's shoulder, tears mixing with rainwater. Rook stood close, pressing against Penny's side, steady as a wall. The storm raged on, but inside Warehouse 7, one small life had been returned. Rain hammered Marigold Ridge with unrelenting force, turning streets into rushing streams and the sky into a ceaseless drum. Thunder rolled low above the valley, echoing between pine-clad slopes. The storm had swallowed the town hall, but in the heart of it, purpose was gathering. Deputy Cole Merritt stood beneath the overhang of the sheriff's office, water dripping from the brim of his hat, issuing orders with clipped efficiency. His presence was steady as a mountain, yet Rowan could see the weight pressing on his shoulders. Tonight was not routine. Tonight could end what had haunted their town for months. A convoy of vehicles moved through the rain. 2 patrol trucks, 1 unmarked SUV, and Rowan's old sedan trailing at the edge. Rook sat in the back seat, posture taut, amber eyes glowing each time lightning split the clouds. Rowan gripped the wheel, her heart thrumming with equal parts dread and resolve. She'd promised herself not to stand aside. This fight belonged to her, too, because she had seen the fear in Penny's eyes, and she knew what silence would cost. They reached the lumberyard's edge. Warehouse number 7 loomed like a dark scar against the storm, its corrugated roof rattling in the wind, Floodlights from patrol trucks cut the rain into silver spears. Cole stepped out first, his uniform soaked instantly, his voice rising above the storm. "Positions. We breach on my mark." Rowan slipped out of her car, rain plastering her hair against her face. Rook leapt down beside her, a shadow of focus and instinct. She adjusted his collar, whispering, "Stay close." The shepherd gave no sound, only squared his body as if readying for battle. The deputies moved into position, crowbars and battering rams gleaming wet. Cole glanced once at Rowan, and though his eyes narrowed, he didn't tell her to leave. He knew she wouldn't. He gave a sharp nod, an acknowledgement of trust. Now the door of Warehouse 7 exploded inward with a crash. Officers surged in, flashlights cutting across stacked crates and cages. The air was rank, urine, mildew, fear. Dogs whimpered from the darkness. Cats hissed. Small creatures scuttled in confinement. Then came the resistance. From the shadows leapt 3 men armed with steel pipes and crowbars. Their faces were hard, weather-beaten, eyes desperate with the knowledge that their world was collapsing. One swung wide at a deputy, sending a flashlight spinning across the floor. Chaos erupted. Rowan barely had time to react when one of them spotted her, a gaunt man with a scar along his jaw, soaked flannel clinging to his frame. He charged, crowbar raised. Rook moved first. With a guttural bark, the shepherd lunged, intercepting the man before he reached Rowan. His jaws clamped down on the man's arm, teeth sinking through wet fabric. The man cried out, dropping his weapon, struggling against the weight of loyalty incarnate. Rook's stance was unwavering, his body shielding Rowan. She gasped, adrenaline burning her chest. "Rook, hold," she urged, and the dog obeyed, pinning but not mauling, his growl vibrating like a warning bell. Deputies rushed to disarm and cuff the man, pulling him away. Rowan dropped to her knees, hugging Rook tightly. His fur was soaked, his scar visible against the rain, but his eyes gleamed with a fierceness that steadied her trembling hands. Around them, the battle pressed on. 2 more men were subdued by deputies wielding batons and restraint holds. Shouts mingled with the storm, until finally the warehouse fell quiet except for the whimpering of animals. Rowan turned, heartbreaking at what she saw. Cages lined the walls, more than 20 in all. Dogs pressed noses against bars, some too weak to bark. Cats hunched in wire boxes, eyes wide with terror. In the far corner, a familiar meow pierced Rowan's chest. She rushed forward and found a small, weathered tabby. Mabel with Tom's cat, fur matted, eyes dulled with fatigue. "Oh, sweetheart," Rowan whispered, fumbling the latch. The cat stumbled into her arms, purring weakly. "We'll get you home." Deputies began unlocking cages, lifting trembling bodies into waiting blankets. Volunteers from Animal Rescue, summoned by Cole earlier, hurried inside, their neon jackets flashing. They moved like a tide of compassion, carrying creatures out into the night toward waiting vans. Near the office space at the back of the warehouse, Cole and 2 deputies emerged, dragging a man between them. Gray Donovan, even restrained, irradiated arrogance. In his late 50s, heavy-set with close-cropped hair silvered at the edges, he sneered, despite the cuffs biting into his wrists. His shirt clung to his bulk, and his boots left muddy prints across the concrete. "You've got nothing," he spat, his voice carrying above the storm. "I'm just renting space. Those animals aren't mine." Cole's eyes were ice. He held up a worn ledger taken from the office desk. "Says here otherwise. Cash payments, buyers' names, dates. Looks like a business record to me." Donovan's sneer faltered, but he forced a laugh. "You can't prove I wrote that." "We don't need to, Cole," replied evenly. "Chain of custody will, and this time you're not wriggling free." Rowan stood a few feet away, Rook at her side. The shepherd's gaze locked on Donovan, steady, unflinching. For a brief second, Donovan's eyes flicked toward the dog, and something passed across his face. Recognition. Perhaps even fear. Rook didn't bark. He didn't need to. His stare alone was judgment. Cole noticed it too. "You see that?" he said coldly. "Even the ones you hurt know your name." The deputies hauled Donovan out into the rain, his protest drowned by thunder. Inside, Rowan knelt among the freed animals. Penny Hart arrived with her mother, both drenched but radiant with relief. When Penny spotted Rowan, she ran forward, tears streaking her face. She dropped to her knees to hug Rook, who lowered his head gently against her shoulder. "You saved me. And now them too," Penny whispered. Her mother clutched her close, sobbing. Openly, the warehouse smelled of rust and sorrow, but hope pulsed there now too. Hope in the cries of animals carried to safety, in the small girl clinging to her mother, in the steadfast shepherd who'd proven himself once more. Rowan stroked Rook's wet fur, whispering, "9 and you're worth more than all the gold in the world." Thunder cracked above, but inside Warehouse 7, justice had begun to root. A month after the stormy night at Warehouse 7, Mary Gold ridge-breathed easier. The valley town, once haunted by whispers of stolen pets and secret trucks, now hummed with a different sound. Hammers, laughter, and the bark of dogs discovering freedom. It was Rowan Pike's idea, but she refused to take credit alone. "It's not mine," she kept saying. "It's ours." And so, Lantern Yard was born, named after the lamps that lit the streets, of the lumber town in its prime, now rekindled to shine for the forgotten animals who needed light again. The yard itself stretched behind an old barn, donated by the county and scrubbed clean of dust and cobwebs. Wooden fences enclosed wide runs where dogs could chase balls and rolling grass. A section of the barn had been converted into a catery, its windows bright with morning sun. Volunteers strung colored lanterns along the eaves, glowing soft at dusk. So the place looked like a fairground of compassion. Rowan worked alongside Mabel Wickham, cane in one hand, determination in the other. Mabel's health had steadied since her collapse. Her doctor insisted she rest more, but Mabel awed at the advice. "Idle hands," she said, waving off concern, "are good for knitting, not for fighting injustice." Her hair, white as moth wings, caught the lantern light as she guided visitors, her voice gentle with the authority of experience. Deputy Cole Merritt became the quiet backbone of the project. Out of uniform, he wore simple flannel shirts and work boots. Sleeves rolled as he built kennels and carried feed sacks. He rarely smiled widely, but when he did, it reached his eyes. Children in town had begun to trust him, not only as a deputy, but as a neighbor who knelt to let a puppy lick his cheek. On a warm Saturday morning, the yard bustled. Families wandered between pens, children laughing as rescued dogs tumbled in play. At one table, Penny Hart sat with crayons spread wide, her tongue sticking out in concentration. When she finished, she ran to Rowan with a paper clutched in her hand. "It's Rook," Penny announced, beaming. The drawing showed the shepherd standing, tall, a cape fluttering from his shoulders, one ear bent, but his chest proud. Around him, she had drawn stars and the words "my hero" in crooked letters. Rowan knelt, heart aching in the best way. "He'll love this," she said, glancing at Rook, stretched under the shade of the porch. She carried the paper over, laying it beside him. The shepherd sniffed it once, then thumped his tail, slow but steady. Penny squealed in delight. Later that day, Dr. Eliza Moreno, the town's veterinarian, arrived for checkups. Eliza was in her 40s, tall with olive skin and a streak of silver in her dark braid. Her hands were gentle but firm, her voice soothing even to the most anxious of creatures. She examined Rook carefully, feeling along his spine, testing the stiffness of his right leg. Rowan hovered nearby, anxiety knotting her chest. Tell me he's okay." Eliza smiled softly. "He's got scars, yes, and that limp will stay. But his heart is strong, lungs clear. With care, he'll have many years yet. Years of comfort, not chains." Rowan exhaled in relief, crouching to hug Rook's neck. The shepherd leaned against her, eyes half closing, as if agreeing that life finally felt longer. News of Lantern Yard had spread quickly after the arrests. People arrived with donations, boxes of blankets, bags of kibble, tins of biscuits. Elderly neighbors brought homemade treats. Teenagers volunteered to walk dogs, even those who had lost. Pets but never recovered them came to give love to the survivors. Meanwhile, in the courthouse downtown, justice was written into record. The trial of Gray Donovan drew a crowd that filled the wooden benches. He sat in his suit, ill-fitting, his expression shifting between defiance and boredom, but the evidence was undeniable. Ledgers, testimony, rescued animals, and the words of the driver who had confessed his role. The judge, a stern woman named Honoria Blake, with silver hair pinned in a crown of braids, delivered the sentence in a voice that carried through the chamber. "Gray Donovan, you are sentenced to 12 years in state prison for illegal trafficking, extortion, and cruelty to animals. All assets connected to these crimes are hereby seized and liquidated for restitution." Gas filled the room. Gray's face paled, his arrogance crumbling. His accomplices, 3 men who had swung pipes and locked cages, received sentences between 5 and 8 years. Shackled, they were led away as murmurs of relief rippled through the townsfolk. Cole attended every session, taking notes even when his presence wasn't required. When the verdict fell, he allowed himself a small nod. Satisfaction mingled with gravity. Justice didn't erase pain, but it promised protection. Back at Lanternard, Rowan shared the news. Families cheered, Mabel wiped tears discreetly, and Penny clapped her hands. "He's gone for good?" she asked. "For long enough," Cole answered. "And the animals will never be his again." The weeks rolled into a rhythm. Rowan rose with the sun, fed dogs clean runs, and ended her evenings under the porch with Rook at her side. Lanterns glowed and rose above them, swaying gently in summer breezes. One twilight, as laughter from children floated across the yard. Rowan looked to the shepherd, stretched out on the porch boards. His eyes were half closed, ears twitching faintly at each sound of play. The bent ear, once a mark of pain, now seemed like a badge of character. "You were almost thrown away," Rowan whispered, brushing a hand through his coarse fur. $9. That's all you were worth to them." Rook opened one eye, dark and gleaming, and rested his head on her boot. To Rowan, the gesture carried more weight than words. He wasn't thrown away at all. He had been found, and now he was home. From across the yard, Mabel called out with her cane raised like a baton. "Rowan, we need another lantern strung by the gate. This place must shine brighter than the courthouse ever will." Rowan laughed, rising to join her, while Rook stretched slowly, groaning like an old soldier, but pushing himself to his feet. Anyway, he followed at her side, steady as the heart of the town itself. Lantern Yard glowed that night not just with lamps, but with the warmth of second chances. And in every bark, every purr, and every child's laugh, the memory of a German shepherd once priced at $9 transformed into something priceless, an emblem of loyalty, resilience, and justice fulfilled. At the end of the story, one truth lingers above all others. Miracles do not always arrive in blinding flashes or thunderclaps from the heavens. Sometimes they come quietly in the form of a scarred old dog sold for $9, or in the courage of a child's drawing, or in the strength of a community that refuses to look away from suffering. In the semiments, we glimpse the hand of God, reminding us that every life, no matter how broken or forgotten, still holds worth beyond measure. In our daily lives, it is easy to miss such miracles. They hide in small acts of kindness, in the patience we offer, in the loyalty of those who walk beside us. To recognize them is to understand that faith is not distant. It is alive in every chance we take to love and protect. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment to let us know your thoughts. And subscribe to join us for more stories of loyalty, healing, and redemption. May God bless you and all who still wait for their miracle to be seen and embraced.